The Everglades is a low place in a low land with a towering stature. It supports an ecosystem unique in all the world, teeming with an array of plants and animals as rich in diversity as the African savannas. It defines the state of Florida and molds the character of the central and southern regions as it sustains the cultural and economic growth. The world's most famous wetland collects vast amounts of rainwater and shares it with an ever-growing urban population, filters and cleanses the water with the plants it nurtures, and captures potential floodwaters like a giant sponge. This popular marsh attracts international tourists even in the middle of July. The birds know why. They are the feathered spectacles of the Everglades and have been the center of attraction for over 100 years. The tricolored heron, brown pelican, white ibis, laughing gull, great egret, homely wood stork, and illustrious roseate spoonbill are all there feeding on fish congregated in tidal pools or trapped on mudflats exposed by more ebb than flow. The birds take refuge in the lush mangroves, and their brilliant hues dot the green and golden Everglades landscape with the colors of the tropics. James Audubon came to paint them. Others came to collect their plumage for fashionable hats of the day and almost decimated them. Today, they come to watch and wonder. For a very long time, but not so long ago, the Everglades was a pristine wilderness. Seasons came and seasons went. Summer rains fell and often caused Lake Okeechobee to spill its waters over the natural southern shore and form a river. This river did not rush down a deep corridor or meander through a crooked channel. It spread out slowly over more than 8 million acres, covering miles and miles with a depth that ranged from a half foot to 2 feet. It moved down the southern Florida peninsula, through a few outlets east and west, but mostly from the shallow lake to Florida Bay. Historically, it was a very slow river, flowing a quarter mile a day. Native Americans living in and around the river called it Pahioki, the grassy waters. Englishmen saw a wide open green wet prairie and recalled the glades of their native countryside. They called this river Everglades, since it stretched as far as one could see. Humans were there, but the impact of their presence was so minimal it was almost non-existent. As recently as 1870, when only a few hundred people lived along the coast of southeastern Florida, an estimated 2 million wading birds inhabited the Everglades. Over the last century, many more people came, and the vibrant South Florida ecosystem was altered to accommodate their needs. As the area grew, the Everglades shrank, its water controlled for human uses. Today, the impacts to the Everglades are all too apparent. The great sheets of water that once moved slowly across the expanse of the original Everglades, recharging the water table and providing flow to streams and rivers, are now harnessed by canals. The natural timing of water ebbing and flowing as it crisscrossed the lower part of the state is now manipulated as it rushes through or stands behind man-made structures. Canals quickly drain land into natural water bodies and are conduits for residential and agricultural runoff that degrade lakes, rivers, and estuaries. Most of the expansive Everglades is now divided into manageable water conservation areas that supply water to the lower East Coast. The natural overland sheet flow, so important to the ecosystem, is now interrupted. Everglades National Park is now one of America's most threatened national parks. How did this happen? Under the shallow water that flowed across South Florida was very rich muck or dark, fertile soil. By building a few small dikes, the land in the center of the state could be drained. Central Florida quickly became one of the last great American frontiers. The climate and the soil made this region ripe for growing crops year-round. Linked waterways became highways for commerce, and farms and towns thrived. By the 1940s, 440 miles of canals were built. Early settlers knew that enduring extreme weather is a way of life in Florida. When the storms of 1926 and 1928 nearly flattened the new frontier, many new pioneers considered the state inhospitable. Drought parched the state during the 1930s and early 40s, and Florida experienced its own version of the Dust Bowl days. Rich, dark Everglades muck was consumed by fire. Salt water rose in coastal city wells. Then, once again, with tenacity, the hurricanes of 47 and 49 struck, leaving massive flooding and devastating property damage in their wake. Cries for relief were heard in Washington. The federal government responded and built the Central and Southern Florida Flood Control Project. Today, 1,800 miles of canals and levees quickly take water away after the heavy downpours, and 200 major water control structures route it where it is most needed when no clouds are on the horizon. The South Florida Water Management District operates and maintains the water control system. The water is managed for towns that became cities and farms that have prospered. The downside is rainwater that once eventually seeped into the land is now sent out to sea and lost forever. The bottom line is, the Everglades does not receive the proper quantity or quality of water at the right place or the right time. Lake Okeechobee suffers from water levels that fluctuate drastically. Estuaries suffer from inundations of fresh water during the storm season and very little fresh water in times of drought. And the population is expected to double in the next 50 years to more than 12 million people. Yet we have a limited supply of fresh water. Today, we have a plan. It is called the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, or CERP. The premise of the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan is to provide the right amount of water and the right flow conditions to the Everglades, while providing water for urban and agricultural needs for a 50-year population projection. A major goal of CERP is to target those things affecting the degradation of the Everglades from the outside. CERP will return most of pre-drainage flows to Everglades National Park. The historic Greater Everglades ecosystem was defined by the way the water flowed from just south of Orlando to Florida Bay. Currently, 1.7 billion gallons of water per day on average is lost through discharge to the ocean. Hydrological restoration, or restoring the natural timing and distribution of water, is the cornerstone to revitalizing the Everglades. The plan calls for a series of ecological and water system improvements to be built over more than 20 years. How will it work? Fresh water that now flows out to sea will be captured and utilized to meet environmental and human needs. The major changes include new reservoirs and treatment systems. Aquifer storage and recovery are facilities to pump fresh water underground in vast porous limestone aquifers for later use. More than 300 wells will be built to store water 1,000 feet underground and alleviate evaporation. As much as 1.6 billion gallons a day may be pumped into underground storage zones. Reservoirs will capture and store more water. Encompassing approximately 180,000 acres, these storage areas will capture fresh water now lost to sea. 2 rock mining areas will be converted to in-ground storage areas. Stormwater treatment areas will improve water quality. Approximately 35,600 acres of man-made wetlands will be built to treat urban and agricultural runoff before it is discharged to natural areas. These are in addition to the 44,000 acres of areas already being constructed under the Everglades Forever Act. Underground barriers will slow seepage. Millions of gallons of groundwater are lost each year as it seeps away from the Everglades towards the eastern coast. Seepage occurs either as underground flow or through levees. One feature to reduce seepage is installing pumps near levees to redirect water back into the Everglades. Selected canals and levees will be modified or removed to promote sheet flow. A more natural overland flow of water through the Everglades will be restored by removing more than 240 miles of project canals and internal levees. Operational changes will be made to the way water is delivered. Extreme fluctuations will be alleviated. Lake Okeechobee water levels will be modified. In the Everglades, a rainfall-driven plan will improve the timing of water flows. 2 wastewater reuse plants are proposed in Miami-Dade County. An existing wastewater treatment plant will provide additional freshwater flow to Biscayne Bay. A new facility will recharge the Biscayne Aquifer to benefit the Everglades National Park, Biscayne Bay, and county well fields. Drinking water supply will remain safe and dependable. The benefits of SERP are enormous. Much of the new water created by the plan will be directed to the natural ecosystems. The extreme highs and lows of Lake Okeechobee, the liquid heart of South Florida, will be reduced and the lake's ecology will rebound. Damaging freshwater releases to estuaries will be eliminated, alleviating stress to fish, oyster beds, and seagrasses. The Everglades will enjoy a more natural timing, flow, and quantity of water, resulting in a diverse and natural habitat for plants and animals. Flood protection throughout the regional water management system will be maintained and in some cases improved. Urban and agricultural water users will have enhanced water supplies. The whole of South Florida has outgrown population projections that were made in the 40s and 50s. Considered to be very generous at the time, the projection for the new millennium was 2 million people. Today, almost 6 million call South Florida home. The estimated cost of the Everglades Restoration Plan is $7.8 billion, to be shared equally by the federal government and the state. It is a collaborative effort with the Army Corps of Engineers, our federal partners, and the Department of Environmental Protection, our state partners. A more than 20-year project, the plan is a lifeline for the Everglades and will provide water for a 16-county area. On a spring day of the new millennium, just before the summer wrapped South Florida in heat and humidity, hope sprung eternal for the Everglades. Governor Jeb Bush, surrounded by farmers, environmentalists, engineers, business executives, and lawmakers from both parties, signed a law to help restore the Everglades. The Everglades Restoration and Investment Act provides $2 billion over the next 10 years. In the fall of 2000, Congress approved the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan and authorized $1.4 billion for construction of 6 pilot projects and 10 project features. Design has started. Construction of several projects is scheduled to begin in the mid-decade. With all our efforts, the nation's most famous wetland will continue to flaunt its colors as breezes sway sawgrass to impart glimpses of an iridescent marsh. Black crows will continue to perch on flimsy reeds and call to alligators swimming lazily through shallow waters. We also heed their call, and along with our state and federal partners, half a century, 5.5 million newcomers, and many lessons later, we will become stewards today to save an American treasure for our children to discover tomorrow.